now facing what may end up being the worst thing humans have ever done to the environment, at least on the short term. You guys know what I'm talking about. The Gulf of Mexico is maybe not the most pristine of places to begin with, perhaps not compared to Antarctica. But now we've guaranteed perhaps decades of destruction for it in some ways. Probably just to save a few bucks, all of which were lost in the first hour of this disaster. And nature will recover over time. We're just a drop in the geologic bucket, as it were. But what we really learned from all of this is that we, as the top of the food chain, and hopefully a few links above the next few links in it, have an inherent responsibility as stewards and guardians of the world we inhabit. And if we fail to accept this responsibility, we are just squandering a fortune that was handed to us. And we'll leave our children and our grandchildren with an impossible debt, what really should be our debt to pay. Antarctica, and therefore the whole Earth, has for decades now been facing another environmental catastrophe. Less dramatic than oil in the Gulf, but the outcome, if we cannot turn it around, could be far more devastating than what we were seeing in the Gulf right now. What I have come to see is that Antarctica, this huge, unexplored, pristine place, not owned by any nation, but by all nations, free of so much of what troubles the rest of the world, murder, politics, exploitation, Antarctica represents some of the best and the purest of human endeavor. But it also is a kind of final warning bell for the whole rest of the Earth. As you will see in Herzog's film, there are already indications of titanic clashes playing out in Antarctic ice. With the loss of the Larsen B ice shelf several years ago, the size of Rhode Island, if this event is any indication of what is to come, we're in for some changes that will affect the entire world in ways that we can't predict. I don't think we can know exactly to what degree our failure as stewards of our resources has contributed to this. But we can be pretty sure that if we continue with the status quo, we have the potential to send ourselves back to the Dark Ages. Neutrinos don't play much role in this. We certainly do not have to worry about neutrinos melting Antarctica. Some people have asked me. In fact, we don't have to worry about them melting much of anything for that matter. But the opportunity for people like me to pursue these kind of otherworldly forms of knowledge depends on the stability of the world that we're in, its sustainability, and these things in turn depend on some kind of equity and accountability and even justice for all the people who inhabit it. Things that are pretty far out of balance currently. 2 generations ago, physicists were hard at work understanding a new theory, quantum mechanics, which completely defied conventional logic. The man on the street, you guys, could well ask, what possible practical value could this theory ever have? And no one had a good answer at the time. In the 2 generations since, this theory, this crazy, insane theory that even Einstein wasn't too sure about, quantum mechanics, has enabled things like the transistor, the computer, the iPhone, even a little thing called Google. And it was possible only because we, as humans, despite some pretty big setbacks in the form of wars and nuclear proliferation, managed to maintain some level of accountability in our stewardship of the Earth. And we could be facing something much worse now. If so, we we may never know what sort of amazing, world-changing neutrino technology is waiting for us 2 generations from now. That's probably how long it will take. So my grandchildren may be using neutrino phones. You can talk through the Earth instead of around it. As Robert Frost wrote in 1920, some say the world will end in fire, some say ice. What we are hearing about Antarctica, the sound of that bell, makes it probably sound like it could be ice. Although a breakup of the huge East Antarctic ice sheet is pretty unlikely, the same thing cannot be said in some extreme case of the West Antarctic ice sheet. And that holds about 20% of the total ice in Antarctica. If that were to collapse, it would raise global ocean levels by 20 feet or more, affecting like something of order 40% of the world's population who live in coastal areas, 40% of the world's total population. They live in coastal areas, including us. And you can only imagine the state of civilization when 3 billion people, that's 40% of what we're going to have fairly soon, are displaced from their homes and want to move in with you because you live up in Makiki Heights. Already within the last year, the Wilkins Shelf on the Antarctic Peninsula is now close to breakup. Many more shelves in Antarctica are in retreat. The loss of these ice shelves may be accompanied by changes in the ocean cold water bottom currents, which in turn play a role in driving the ocean conveyor systems, other kinds of currents, which affect the entire globe, both biologically and geophysically. These are sobering events. That Antarctic bell, if you will, represents a forewarning for us of what may be a difficult future. But Herzog's film today is not only about that. Herzog is certainly a realist, but at the same time, he has a weakness in the knees for hope. And I appreciate that. Antarctica is a place where you really can't stay glum for very long about the future. It really is a place of